Okay, thank you. Good morning. This is the Town of Hilton Head Island Board of Zoning Appeals special meeting on Thursday, January 28, 2021, starting at 9:02 a.m. My name is Patsy Bryson. I'm the chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I call the meeting to order. Ms. Haley, are we in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Diane Bush, who is the new staff attorney for the town of Hilton Head Island. Ms. Bush, there we are, and we can see her. Thank you. Welcome. We look forward to working with you. And I would ask you, we also are welcoming David Fingerhut back to the Board of Zoning Appeals. He previously served on the board and previously served as chair. So welcome back, David. And we'd ask Ms. Bush to swear you in. Ms. Bush.
Diane, if you'll unmute yourself, please.
All right. Maybe that's better. Mr. Fingerhood.
Yes.
Sir, would you repeat after me? I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I'm duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state
that I'm duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state
to exercise the duties of the office to which I have been appointed,
to exercise the duties of the office to which I have been appointed,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state
and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Now we'll proceed to the introduction of board procedures. This morning we have two matters on the agenda, one of which has been withdrawn, and we'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda shortly, but I'm supposed to talk about the procedures first. So the procedures for hearing an appeal, because the matter is an appeal. The appellant shall have a maximum of 20 minutes to present the facts and applicable legal principles that the appellant believes supports the appeal. During the presentation by the appellant, members of the board may ask such questions as they deem appropriate. At the discretion of the chair, the appellant's time may be extended if the applicant is unable to complete the presentation due to questioning from the board. Staff shall have a maximum of 20 minutes to present the facts and applicable legal principles that the staff believes support the position of staff with respect to the appeal. During the presentation by staff, members of the board may ask questions as they deem appropriate. At the discretion of the chair, staff's time may be extended if the staff is unable to complete the presentation due to questioning from the board. Where the appellant is someone other than the property owner of the property that is subject of the appeal, the property owner or their agent shall have a maximum of 20 minutes to present the facts and applicable legal principles that the property owner believes supports the position of the property owner with respect to the appeal. During the presentation by the property owner or their agent, members of the board may ask such questions as they deem appropriate. At the discretion of the chair, the property owner's time may be extended if the property owner is unable to complete the presentation due to questioning from the board. Where the appellant, there is another provision here where the appellant is someone other than the holder of permit or approval or their agent, and that is not the case today. After the presentation by the staff, the chair may allow a maximum of 5 minutes for all parties to present any desired rebuttal. Following the presentation, the board may ask such additional questions of the appellant, property owner, holder of the permit or approval, or their agent or staff as the board members deem appropriate. Public comment is not permitted in the case of an appeal from an administrator decision. Following the presentation by all the parties, the board, upon motion duly made and seconded, shall vote on the appeal. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 16-2-103T4D of the LMO, the board has the following choices for action. Affirm the action of the administrator from which the appeal was taken, or modify the action of the administrator from which the appeal was taken, and to that end, the board shall have all the powers of the administrator from which the appeal was taken and may issue a permit or direct that a permit be issued. Or the board may reverse the action of the administrator from which the appeal was taken, and to that end, the board shall have all the powers of the administrator from which the appeal was taken and may issue a permit or direct that a permit be issued. Or, the last choice, remand the action of the administrator from which the appeal was taken for such further proceedings as the board may deem appropriate. The motion shall contain at a minimum a finding of those facts which the member making the motion deems material to the decision. Following the vote, the board shall issue a written notice of action. The written notice of action shall include the decision as well as the findings of fact and conclusions of law adopted by the board. That is the procedure which we'll follow today pursuant to the Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure for the town of Hilton Head Island. Now on to approval of the agenda. Does staff have any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, this is Teresa. If
Yes,
I
ma'am.
may I do a roll call for the record, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, please, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Walzak?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. White? Mr. White, I believe you're muted. Mr. White, we'll come back to you. I do see you on the video. Ms. Loudermilk?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Dr. Ponder?
Present.
Mr. Fingerhut?
Present.
Ms. Bryson?
Present.
And Mr. White?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haley. It appears as though we still have a quorum. So I apologize.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
I jumped right over your important job.
That's
Okay.
okay.
Now we go back to the agenda. Does staff have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, appeal 002275-2020, the request for appeal from Leslie Ford on behalf of Cedar Woods Property Owners Association has been withdrawn by the applicant, so please remove it from the agenda.
Are there any changes from the board to the agenda? If not, may I have a motion to amend the agenda to remove the request for appeal from Leslie Ford, APL-002275-2020?
So moved.
Mr. Walczak, is there a second?
Second.
Second,
All
by,
yours.
we'll give it to Mr. Fingerhut since he's new today. Any discussion on the motion? If not, may we have a roll call, Ms. Haley?
Certainly. Mr. Walzak?
In favor of the motion.
Mr. White?
Favor of the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk?
For the motion.
Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, I believe you're muted on your end. Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Johnson. Dr. Ponder?
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut?
For the motion.
Ms. Bryson?
For the motion.
And we do have an approval without Mr. Johnson's vote.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Haley. Now may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Mr. Fingerhut. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Loudermilk, any discussion on the motion? If not, Ms. Haley, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Walczak,
For the motion.
Mr. White,
For the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk,
For the motion.
Mr. Johnson. I believe we lost Mr. Johnson at this time.
Okay.
Dr. Ponder,
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut,
For the motion.
Ms. Bryson.
For the motion. And for the record, we still have a quorum. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of December 14, 2020. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 14, 2020 meeting?
So move.
Ms. Loudermilk, is there a
Second.
second? Second, Mr. Walczak. Any discussion on the motion? If not, Ms. Haley, please call the roll.
Mr. Walczak,
For the motion.
Mr. White,
For the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk,
For the motion.
Mr. Johnson, I do see Mr. Johnson is on, but he is muted on his end. We'll go to Dr. Ponder,
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut.
Abstain. I wasn't present, so not qualified.
Yes, sir. Ms. Bryson.
For the motion. Okay, the next item on the agenda is appearance by citizens. Ms. Haley, will you address that matter?
Certainly. Public comments concerning agenda items were to be submitted electronically via the Open Town Hall portal. There were no comments submitted on the portal. Also, citizens were provided the option to give public comment during the meeting by phone, and there were no requests to give public comment by phone.
Thank you, ma'am. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and there is no unfinished business. We'll move on to new business. With the amended agenda, the next item on the agenda is the request for appeal from Daniel Ben Israel on behalf of the Parker Companies, LLC. The appellant is appealing staff's determination dated December 3, 2020, regarding potential signage for the proposed Parker's Kitchen at 430 William Hilton Parkway, Parcel E of Sea Turtle Marketplace. Is the appellant present, and is the appellant the property owner? Mr. Ben Israel, I apologize, I see you are there. You may unmute yourself.
Yes, good.
Are you the property owner or a representative of the property owner? Yes, sir, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Like he's frozen.
Representative of, and
I'm sorry, sir, you're not coming through very well. Can you try again?
can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, sir, please go ahead. Are you the property owner or a representative of the property owner? Yes, sir, we're not able to hear you speak.
Mr. Ben Israel, there seems to be a very poor connection on your end. Oh, I see he dropped.
Yes, we lost his video. I see a very small red bar on the audio.
Yes, ma'am. Missy's gonna call him right now to see if we can help him.
Okay. So we'll stand at ease for a moment to see if we can reconnect with the appellant.
Madam Chair, this is Bob, and I want you to know that I'm back.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
we are on the agenda to the place where there is an appeal regarding a proposed sign for Parker's Kitchen.
I've heard everything that's been going on. I was just muted and have just gotten back live.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you, sir. For those members of the public who may be listening in, the board is waiting on the appellant to be reconnected with the meeting. So we're now standing at ease, waiting on the appellant to be reconnected. The town staff is reaching out to the appellant. The matter is the appeal of a decision of the staff regarding potential signage for the proposed Parker's Kitchen at 430 William Hilton Parkway, Parcel E of the Sea Turtle Marketplace. Ms. Haley, any luck yet?
Yes, we reached the applicant and we just hung up with him so that he could try to reconnect.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure, we're just waiting to see him pop back on.
All right. Technology is a great tool when it works. But in today's virtual world, sometimes we don't have as much luck with connections. So we'll patiently stand by a little bit longer. Ms. Haley and Ms. Bush, while we are waiting, there's just two items I need to report to the board, which is the next item on the agenda. Any problem procedurally with me going ahead and just giving those two quick updates?
No, ma'am. This is Teresa. No, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So it's agenda item 11, board business. The two things to report is there's an annual report to the town council from the chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. That is scheduled for February 12th at the regular meeting of the town council. Ms. Lewick and I are going to be working on that report, and I'm hoping we can work out the schedule to send it to the board members as a draft to see if you have any comments or suggestions before the report is made. I want to make sure that the board has an opportunity to do that. The second thing is that based on some of our recent hearings, we thought it might be helpful to review our rules of procedure. Ms. Bush, our new staff attorney, and Ms. Lewick are working on that, looking at perhaps best practices from other jurisdictions. And so we'll come back to us with a schedule to take a look at our rules of procedure to see if there are any recommendations for amendments. So that's a heads up for possible future action. And those are the two items I have to report.
Okay,
Any
we see the appellant just joined the meeting. He's unmuted on our end. He'll just need to unmute on his end.
Okay. Mr. Ben Israel, are you there? Can you unmute on your end so we can hear you?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you now. I believe you established that you're a representative of the property owner. So you now have 20 minutes.
I can hear.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Can you hear me? This is Patsy Bryson, the chair of the board. Mr. Ben Yisrael, we cannot hear you. Ms. Haley or Ms. Lewick, can you help us on the staff end?
Yes, the appellant will need to get to a location where he has better reception. It appears that the connection is it's not good, which is causing the issues.
Yes, ma'am. Is there some way that the staff can connect with him and ask him to get to a better location, and we can go ahead and proceed with other business on our agenda?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we're doing right now.
Okay,
So yes.
great. Thank you, ma'am. Well, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which are reports from staff. This is a 12A, an update on the proposed LMO amendments that address waivers issued by the staff. I understand Ms. Dixon, our Development Review Administrator, is going to make that report. Ms. Dixon, there you are.
I'm here.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning. You may proceed.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to update y'all on the LMO amendment process. We thought last year that we were going to be taking forward a set of amendments, and so we have a big long list, some of which came from the Board of Zoning Appeals. But due to COVID, any potential LMO amendments got put on hold, got put on the back burner, and we've only been dealing with more high priority tasks. But we do have a list that's ready to start doing research on, and we're hoping to kind of rear that back up over the next few months. So that should be coming forward in a few months. The other thing I wanted to update y'all on was give you a little bit of history about the waivers and why we do them and how they came to fruition in the LMO. It seemed over the last year, the board questioned why there were so many staff waivers and kind of hinted at, there may need to be some LMO changes based on the fact that there were so many waivers. We took a look at the list of waivers per your direction and, to see if there were any potential LMO changes needed based on so many waivers happening. And staff could not find anything that needed to change in the LMO, but I did wanted to let you know why the waivers came into the LMO in the first place. So back before the waiver process was in the LMO, the way nonconformities were looked at was that if you made any change to a nonconforming site feature or structure, that you had to bring it fully into compliance with the current LMO. So what we saw was a lot of older properties not being redeveloped or not being maintained because in order to, once they touched it, they had to bring the site fully into compliance. So for example, if you had a non-conforming parking lot, if they wanted to make any change to it, they would have to redo the entire parking lot and bring it into full compliance with the LMO. And that was just too costly it really deterred any kind of redevelopment. And so town council at that time was encouraging redevelopment, and we want to see sites redevelop. And so they adopted language which allowed, put the waiver process into the LMO to encourage redevelopment. So basically the waiver process allows non-conforming footprints to remain as long as they're doing something to bring the site into compliance. So if you have a non-conforming site that has a deck in a buffer or a pool in a buffer, and the property owner wants to redo the pool or redo the deck, before they wouldn't be able to do that unless they pulled the deck back out of the buffer. Now you can maintain the footprint of that buffer, the non-conforming encroachment into that buffer, as long as they're doing something. They have to go through the waiver process, and they have to demonstrate that they're doing something to bring the site into compliance. So they can keep the footprint of the deck, but maybe they need to add buffer vegetation to the buffer, to an area that's lacking vegetation. So that was the whole reason behind putting the waiver process into the LMO, is to encourage redevelopment. And staff thinks it's been working really well. And so I just wanted to fill you all in on that. That's the reason behind you all seeing so many waivers by staff. It's really allowing some sites to redevelop, and we are gaining compliance by doing so. So that's my update. Do you have any questions about that?
Let's go around the board as we usually do and give everyone a chance to ask questions. Ms. Loudermilk, any questions from you?
I guess my only question, Ms. Dixon, and I understand what you're saying on the waivers, and I totally agree that I think the concept is a beneficial one. Not having a waiver in front of me, is the verbiage clear when we review those waiver requests? Is it clear maybe what the beneficial action is that is being taken? So I think as long as it's clear to us why the waiver is occurring, I mean, it makes total sense to me.
In our waiver letter approval, we put in there what the applicant is doing to bring the site more into compliance. The waiver summary that's provided to you all is just a summary of each waiver that has been granted since the previous month. If you'd like for us to include in that summary going forward what the applicant is doing to make the site better, we can go ahead and add that to the summary if you all prefer.
I think it might be helpful in a very, very summary form, not repeating the whole situation. But yeah, I think that might be helpful. That would answer any questions before we raise them.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Johnson, any questions from you?
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Fingerhut, just to give you a little bit more background, we had, we receive, as you recall, these waiver reports from staff, and sometimes it seems like there were a lot of them stacking up, because some of them seem closer to perhaps granting variances. That was a question that was raised about, can you tell us how many were done during the past year or two? I can't remember how far back the staff went for us. And then we looked at the number, and so we asked the staff to take a look at it to see if anything in the LMO might ought to be amended to address the number and the types of waivers. So that's what she's reporting on. So any questions or comments from you?
Excellent. Thanks for the explanation. Actually, no, I have no questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Dr. Ponder, any questions or comments from you?
None.
I see.
Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Walczak, any questions or comments from you?
Yes, just quickly, Nicole, using those two examples that you mentioned, if the owner would like to repair his deck or, let's say, replaster his pool, in other words, maintenance work, does he have to go through the procedure?
If it's just maintenance, then no. But if they're redoing their deck, so if they're tearing out their deck and installing it or reconstructing it, the language before would make them pull that deck out and not allow them to redevelop it in that same footprint. And so now with the waiver process, they can utilize that same non-conforming footprint as long as they're doing something to the site to bring it into compliance, make it better.
Thank you.
Mr. White, any questions or comments from you?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's to me, and I know I was one of the ones asking questions about this. Ms. Dixon, you described the situation where it's within the same footprint. Is there a provision within the waiver language where they can increase outside of the footprint a little bit more? I can't remember if it's a percentage or anything like that.
No, you cannot make the site more non-conforming, so you can keep that non-conforming footprint, but if you wanted to, say, extend the deck even further into the buffer, that would require a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay, all right. And I think it would be helpful, as we did this past year, for the staff to give us a summary at the end of the year of all of the waivers and the types of waivers as you did. And I cannot remember whether it was 1 year or 2 years back, but I think it was helpful for us to take a look at that and maybe do that
Okay.
on an annual basis.
Okay, we can do that.
Right. Anybody else from the board have questions or comments after we went around once? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Dixon, for that report.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is the update on the board training. Ms. Lewick, are you available for that, or are you still trying to reach the appellant?
Madam Chair, our applicant is back on. If we could go back to the appeal and then resume staff reports later,
Yes, ma'am.
would be. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that. Okay, Mr. Ben Yisrael, are you available now to make your presentation?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Okay, we can hear you better now for now. So you may proceed. You have 20 minutes. And Ms. Haley
Thank you,
will.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. Let me first start by apologizing profusely for my terrible internet connections. I'm still experiencing some technical difficulties here, trying to join on my computer, which is not going to allow me to share any of the documents that I have pulled up. So I trust that you all have had an opportunity to review the documents that were submitted, to include my letter, as well as a couple of exhibits, including sign exhibit showing 4 options that we're looking to construct on the property, information from the property owner or portions of the contract with the current property owner, granting us exclusive rights to utilize, redesign, and modify the existing sign. I'll back up by, I guess, restating our appeal. On December 3rd, it was determined by staff, by the Development Review Administrator, that Parker's would not be allowed to have its own freestanding sign on the site, as it was considered to be a part of the larger shopping center development, Sea Turtle Marketplace. We're appealing that determination on the basis that this development has been granted exclusive rights to, again, utilize, modify, or redesign the existing sign. And we feel as though, having been given those rights by the current property owner, we have not closed on the property yet. That closing could take place at the beginning of February. Right now, potentially within the first or second week of February, but that's to be determined. But as a part of that transaction, the current property owner has agreed via contract to convey to us the exclusive rights to redesign and utilize that entire sign. And with that being said, we would like to proceed with refacing the sign, removing the reference to Sea Turtle Marketplace, and replacing that with references to Parker's Kitchen to include our gas pricers. In the packet, you were provided with, I believe, a copy of the site plan. If you weren't, unfortunately, I'm unable to share that right now. But you were provided with.
This is Missy Lewick. We do have your submittal and can share that. I know when we met last week, you were intending to share your screen, and we can do that for you if you would just tell us which page to go to.
Sure. If you can go to the signage page that shows the 4 signage options. And I'm also assuming that the board is familiar with the existing sign. I included pictures of that existing sign in my packet as well. Missy, if you can share that with the board, thank you so much.
Sure. Would you like us to show the one that has the options for the monument sign? Is that the page?
Yeah. Yes,
okay,
that's correct.
That's what's up right now. Can the board see that?
Okay, awesome.
Yes, this is the chair, Ms. Bryson. I can see it. Can other board members see that? It says monument details, Parker's Kitchen, and there are 4 options of signs.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Yes.
So, Mr. Ben Yisrael, we have seen, the staff first showed a photograph of the corner of the parcel showing the Sea Turtle Marketplace. So we have seen that, and then the next slide that we saw are the ones that the one that we're talking about now with the 4 options of the monument signs. So you may proceed.
Sure. Thank you again for sharing that, Missy. So as you can see on the existing sign, there are panels there reserved for the would-be tenants of the shopping center, as well as the Sea Turtle Marketplace reference at the very top of the sign. In looking at our options, our preference is to construct something along the lines of option number 2 or number 4. Again, that's to be determined internally as to which one we will go with. They're quite similar, but the existing sign height is 10 feet, and it is our preference to modify that sign, or if we were granted approval to actually reconstruct that sign and increase the height to either 15 feet or 12 feet minimum. If we weren't allowed to do that, then it would be our preference to amend the sign, or modify the sign rather, and have that sign resemble option 2 or 4. Again, we're making this appeal based on the fact that we've been granted exclusive rights to utilize this sign by the current owner, which effectively exempts us from being considered a part of the larger shopping center, which would restrict us to only having panels on the existing sign as designed. I'll stop there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this point.
Okay.
I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Mr. Ben Yisrael, just to make sure of what we have in the record from you, I'm going to list the documents that we have, which were published on the town's website, and which the board members have and have had available to them and have in front of them. First is your appeal submittal application dated December 17, 2020. The second one is a letter from you dated December 17, 2020 to the BZA members regarding the appeal of the zoning determination on signage. And these documents are being shared now on our screens. The next one is the photograph previously referred to of the corner location showing the Sea Turtle Marketplace sign. The next item in the record from you is the monument details, the 4 options, which you were just describing to us. The next item is an email memo from you to Nicole Dixon and Thomas Matthews, dated December 28, 2020. The next item is an email to you dated December 3, 2020 from Ms. Dixon, Development Review Administrator. And the next item that we have in the record is a town form entitled Written Interpretation Request, signed by you, dated October 21, 2020, including a statement of interest on the second page of that document. And staff, was there anything that I overlooked as part of the appellant's submittal?
No, I think you've covered it. Thank you.
Okay. Without objection, all of those documents from the appellant will be entered into the record. Is there any objection? Okay. Now we'll go to questions of the appellant by board members, and we do this in kind of a rotating order so that everyone gets to go first or last or in the middle. This rotation, Dr. Ponder, you get the first crack.
Madam Chairman, let me just be sure. Am I asking my questions only to the appellant or only to the town, or?
Yes, ma'am, only to the appellant at this time.
My question to you is, how did you get the sign rights from the owner? Did you pay for them? How were you given these rights?
Yeah, so if I may, Madam Chair, we're in the process of purchasing the property, and just a little background on the property. The previous property owner experienced some financial difficulties, and the property is currently owned by the bank that originally financed the development. And in our negotiations with the bank regarding the purchase of the property, this is one of the issues that we raised as being significant to us in order to close on the property, having the appropriate, adequate amount of signage. And so as a part of those negotiations, the property owner, being the bank, relinquished their rights to the sign to us and secured from the other tenant that's currently on the sign an agreement to remove their signage from that sign, leaving us with the exclusive rights to utilize the sign. So it's a part of the purchase and sale agreement.
So this parcel is owned by the bank, unlike the rest of Sea Turtle Market?
I actually can't speak to the ownership of the other portions of the marketplace. I'm not sure how the ownership interest is broken down, but I do know that they own this parcel exclusively.
So this parcel was always treated separately, to your knowledge?
According to my knowledge, and based on the documents that were presented by staff, which I guess I don't disagree with, or I have no basis to disagree. This property is a part of the Sea Turtle Marketplace, and to my knowledge, has always been considered, based on the documents presented by staff, to be considered a part of the shopping center.
Thank you, sir. That's all for me, Madam Chair.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ponder. Mr. Walzak, you're up next in asking questions of the appellant.
Yes, thank you. Continuing along those lines, how many parcels are on the entire site? The entire marketplace. In other words, going down to what's that coffee place down at the end? Is that all part of one parcel? Starbucks?
Yeah. So the other portions of the shopping center, they're not all fee simple lots. I don't have let's see if I can pull up the larger master plan here. See if those are all broken out into separate parcels. I'm sorry, I can't access that.
All right. Well,
document.
Do each of these parcels have their own sign? In other words, your particular parcel has a sign, but that was supposedly meant for the entire development, or are there other signs there for the other parcels?
Yes, there are other signs for the larger development for the other users or tenants in the shopping center. There's one on Matthews Drive at the other entrance that from which we would gain access to our site, and then there's one other sign on William Hilton Parkway further west, advertising tenants in the shopping center as well. Starbucks, I believe, has their own sign on their parcel as well.
Now, so then originally, this particular sign, how many businesses were supposed to be put on that sign?
It looks like there are 6 panels, I believe. Let's go back.
There would be room for 6 individual businesses on that corner.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why, to date, there's only one sign there for Starbucks.
Back at your corner now.
That's correct.
So you want to enlarge the sign also, right?
That would be our preference, to increase the height, mainly the height of the sign. We could work within the current width, but we would further increase the height of the sign to a maximum of 15 feet, no lower than 12 feet.
What is Parker's Kitchen? Are we dealing with a gas station with what?
Yep. So this is a convenience store and fueling operation with a full service kitchen on the interior. Yep, serving breakfast, lunch, dinner.
All right. How much signing or business identification will be placed on the building and or the canopy over the gas pumps?
So on the building, we will have a wall sign that says Parker's Kitchen in a configuration that looks similar to option number 1, if you will, where Parker's and the kitchen is below Parker's. And on the canopy, we will have Parker's Kitchen, or Parker's rather, on the canopy as well.
Okay.
And so the problem we run into is obviously we would like to have a freestanding sign, which is, customary for all of our locations and across, the business landscape for establishments. However, the problem we run into is not having enough room for the pricers if we're limited to just having one or two of those smaller sign panels on the existing sign, which brings about the need to enlarge the size of the sign.
And now the size of the existing sign was apparently already approved for the site and for the same exact size of the parcel? Was it meant to represent more of the parcel or less of the parcel?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
In other words, signage is a, the amount you can have is based on what's in the LMO. So apparently somebody decided that this was the size of the sign that was permitted at the time. And was it permitted for just your particular parcel, or was it permitted for more of the site, a larger area, larger frontage, so on?
Sure. All evidence would suggest that it was permitted to accommodate our parcel as well as other tenants or parcels in the development.
So then it sounds to me, and again, I haven't dug into this sign ordinance deeply, but it sounds to me then if it was meant to be for a larger parcel, and you now have a smaller parcel, it would seem to me the sign would have to be smaller, not larger.
That's I think I understand your rationale there, and I'm not sure that the size of the sign was based on the lot size. And if Nicole is in the room,
yeah, well, I was hoping to get to that. I mean, yeah, I was hoping to get to that, but I think it's based on roadway frontage, Nicole, something like that.
I can answer some of that during my presentation, or I can answer it now, however you want me to answer it now.
Yeah,
So the sign that the three monument signs that are out there, the freestanding signs, are part of the larger sign system for Sea Turtle Marketplace, and it's based on the entire square footage of the structures that are out there. So because they're approximately over 140,000 square feet, the sign is allowed to be the size that it is. If Parker's was a standalone site somewhere, not part of the shopping center, and they came in for a sign permit, they'd only be able to have a sign that's 40 square feet with a maximum height of 8 feet.
Right now, that sign is at least 80, maybe 90 square feet, the way it looks.
And it's already higher than what would be allowed just for a Parker sign.
Right.
You want to go ahead and continue with questions?
Okay. Yeah, that's enough for me for now. I'll defer to others in the board.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. White, any questions from you?
If we were to approve this, what's to say that the other property owners wouldn't also ask for some type of variance, a sign variance?
And I think, Mr. White, you're asking the appellant that question.
I am.
Mr. Ben Yisrael?
Sure, Madam Chair, if I may. Again, we're pursuing this option based on the fact that the property owner of the larger or portions, at least portions of the larger Sea Turtle Marketplace shopping center is granting us the right to exclusively use this sign. So, you know, other tenants looking to exercise that same option would have to also likewise be granted that right by the owner. And it's my assumption that given the unique nature of our situation where this parcel is not or can be viewed as being separate, although it's, historically considered a part of the shopping center, it is treated differently because of its positioning on the property. And so our situation is unique, unlike some of the other tenants. And I would imagine that the owner wouldn't be so inclined to grant them exclusive rights to the other signs, just given the nature of and how things were configured otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Loudermilk, any questions from you of the appellant?
Yes. Back to the nature of this transfer from the current bank owner. Is this a fee simple, deeded, real property transfer that is free of any restrictions, i.e., in the future, could Parker's turn around and resell this to Enmark without, is it a completely free, independent, fee simple transfer that gives you all the rights of any other fee simple property owner going forward?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So no reversionary repurchase rights back to the bank or quote subdivision owner if Parker's chooses to sell.
That I can't answer. I'm not privy to all of the details of the contract, the purchase and sale contract, but I don't know if there's some drawback clause or something of that nature in the contract. Sorry.
Okay. To me, that seems like an important piece of the puzzle, but let me see if there's anything else that go ahead, please.
And I was going to ask, Madam Chair, if I may, I was going to ask, what bearing would that have, I guess, on, I'm trying to understand how that would impact.
This is the chair. I think board members are allowed to ask their questions and you can address them as best you can. And then it will be up to the board as a whole to determine what the relevance of any documents, testimony presented to us during the hearing.
Got it. Very well. Thank you.
And I guess my other question is, again, trying to relate size issues, but what is the footprint of, what's the square footage of your parcel and the improved area that Parker's would be constructing?
Okay, I can answer that. Okay, so the site is approximately just shy of 1.5 acres, 1.47 acres. The building itself is about 4,920 square feet.
Okay.
And yep, for the most part, I mean, I would say probably about 15,000 square feet of that site would probably not be developed with hardscape, parking, curbing, buildings, sidewalks, things of that nature.
I'm sorry, what was that number?
Somewhere I would guesstimate somewhere between 10 to 15,000 square feet. So that's going to be landscaping and planted islands in the parking area, things of that nature. Otherwise, everything's going to be paved for parking, loading areas, or sidewalks around the building.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Loudermilk?
Nope, I'm good for now. Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Johnson, any questions from you?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Is this, just for clarification, is this a double-sided sign or single-sided?
Double-sided.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fingerhut, any questions from you?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ben Yisrael, if I'm in the Sea Turtle Marketplace in Starbucks, can I drive to Parcel E, in other words, to your site that you're going to develop or you're planning to develop, without going on 278? In other words, can I drive within the Sea Turtle Marketplace to get there?
Yes.
Okay. So the property then, it is, well, as you said before, it is part of the Sea Turtle Marketplace, and your seller is granting you exclusive rights over the sign. I guess my only other question is, can the property owner who's selling the parcel to you convey rights to you that it itself does not have?
Well, I would present that they do have those rights as the owner of the property and the shopping center to convey rights or interest in real property in the shopping center, to include the signage.
So go ahead, please. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all I had.
Okay. So the freestanding signs that were approved as part of the Sea Turtle development, it's your position that the property owner has exclusive control of what to do with them, including their size and composition?
Exclusive control under the guidance of the LMO, yes.
I mean, subject to what's been granted?
Yeah, it's my position that the property owner does have exclusive control over the property, and including signage. All of that subject to obviously the zoning ordinance or the LMO and whatever provisions there are for signage, design, things of that nature. Aside from that, yes, it's my position that the property owner has exclusive control and the rights to convey interest in those in signage.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, the next questions will be mine. The first question / comment is that I'm a bit bothered that we don't have a legal document from you showing that that the current owner of this parcel can convey to you the interest to remove the sign and replace it with another. Do you have in your possession a copy of the sales contract, or is it an option to purchase, or what type of legal document is there that you contend gives you this right?
Yes, so the excerpt that I included in my packet, it comes from the purchase and sale contract that we have with the current owner.
Sorry,
granting
I'm
us-
looking. I'm looking for that. Did you lift some language and put it in your letter? Is that what you're talking about?
No, actually, there's a paragraph that begins with notwithstanding the foregoing.
Okay.
That's actually from the contract itself. It's a separate Word document that was included in the packet.
See, it appears as though it may have been attached to your December 17, 2020 letter to Nicole Dixon. It says an attachment, and then there's one attachment that has the paragraph beginning notwithstanding the foregoing.
That is correct.
And the staff has kindly put that screen up on the board for, on our shared screen for all board members. I'm just looking at it. Okay. So the other question I have is I'm a little bit confused about your request. From your testimony today, you said that the existing sign is 10 feet high and you want to increase that to 12 or 15 feet. But you have not applied for a variance, which I would understand would be required in order to increase the size of the sign, whether it's height or width. So I do not see that. And then the other thing that you're asking is to remove the Sea Turtle Marketplace development sign and replace it with the Parker's sign, the Parker's Kitchen sign. So that appears to be the subject of your appeal. So
Madam
anyhow,
Chair?
yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, this is Nicole. Can I interrupt real quick? The LMO does not allow variances from sign standards.
Okay.
So I let Mr. Ben Israel know that he cannot apply for a variance. His option would be to appeal my determination.
Okay. So then you're asking this board to overturn the administrator's decision in some way to allow the replacement of the development sign and also to increase the size of the sign. Is that are those the two matters for your appeal, sir?
Yeah. So I think the primary question is we're looking for the board to affirm our exclusive right to utilize the sign, which effectively would mean that we have our own freestanding sign in Sea Turtle Marketplace. With that, we would look to remove the Sea Turtle Marketplace identification from the sign to further, again, exercise our exclusive right to use the sign. So that's the first piece of this. The staff determined that we could not have our own freestanding sign, which would mean that other tenants would be allowed on that sign, and the Sea Turtle Marketplace identification would be allowed to remain on the sign. We're appealing that based on the fact that we've been given exclusive rights to the sign. So that's the first piece. The second piece of it, which is a bit more convoluted, is given the fact that there aren't any provisions for variance from the sign standards, we're asking for determination to be made to allow us to increase the sign, occupy more than 40 square feet, and increase the height of the sign. That's a bit more convoluted, but in the end, our primary request is to have our exclusive rights to utilize the sign affirmed by the board.
Okay. Then going back to your letter of December 17, 2020, with the attachment showing that language, which again, notwithstanding the foregoing, in the third line of that, it says, but not substantially expand or enlarge the pre-existing monument sign. So it would appear to be contrary to this agreement, which we do not have in evidence, that you could not enlarge, modify, redesign, but you can do that, but not substantially expand or enlarge. My apologies, but you cannot substantially expand or enlarge the sign. So that's why I'm a bit puzzled about your request. But
Sure.
it appears as though your main request is to be able to replace the development sign with your standalone business sign. And it's my understanding that if this is a separate parcel from the development, then you would be limited to a 40 square foot sign, no higher than 8 feet.
That is correct. And the signage options that were presented and that you have in front of you, I believe were based on that. And so we're showing an 8-foot tall sign. I think it's 8 feet 10 inches. The square footage, however, I think is in question, whether or not that meets the maximum square footage of 40 square feet. But we did show you a sign that goes up to 8 feet 10 inches. If I may, Madam Chair, there was a memo shared with me or written to me from Nicole, I believe, stating that staff, let's see here. Yeah, a memo dated December 28th addressed to me from Nicole seeking clarification on our request and stating that the sign could be modified, but it would be staff's preference to see the sea turtle identification and address remain at the top of the sign. In that memo, I took away from that memo that staff was okay with us having exclusive rights to utilize the sign, but again, it would be their preference to have Sea Turtle Marketplace remain and the address remain on the sign. We're taking exception to that, and we're certainly agree with staff that we want to utilize the entire sign, but we would also like to have Sea Turtle Marketplace removed from the sign.
Okay, we do have a copy of that email correspondence dated December 28, 2020, with 2 time inserts. One is 3:07, and the other one is 4:31:28, both PM. So we do have those.
Okay.
Those are my questions, and I think some of our questions can be addressed by Ms. Dixon during her presentation. Before we go to that, any other questions from board members? Mr. Ben Yisrael.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Walczak.
Yes, one thing came to mind. Should other businesses utilize the rest of the property, what would they use for signage?
There are 2 other signs on the property. There's one on William Hilton, and there's another on Matthews Drive that's available for tenants in the marketplace.
And so they would have the ability to put their strip name on those signs. Whereas this sign, as it is originally planned, was a plan for that, correct? That you said it could have enough room for 6 businesses on there.
Yeah, I believe
so they have to put their signs or their identification somewhere else.
Well, yes, and currently there are, I would imagine, 7 or 8 tenants within that entire marketplace, and none of those, well, with the exception of Starbucks, none of those other tenants are advertising on that sign.
Okay.
Any other board members, questions of Mr. Ben Israel, Mr. Ben Israel before we go to the staff's presentation?
I could
Dr.
ask one
Ponder?
other question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have other Parker's Kitchen locations on the island?
There's one location on the island.
And what's the signage there?
Currently,
What is the signage there?
we do have a freestanding sign at that location.
What's the size of it?
The dimensions, I wish I could speak to that, but unfortunately I do not. I can't.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
Any other board members have questions before the staff presentation? And Ms. Dixon, you may proceed. Again, you have 20 minutes. Ms. Haley will serve as our timekeeper.
Sure, thank you. Nicole Dixon for the record. So first I wanted to just clarify my December 3rd, 2020 determination letter. When I was originally asked to write the determination letter, I was under the impression that I thought Parker's was looking at adding an additional freestanding sign in addition to the Sea Turtle Marketplace signage that is there. So nothing really in my determination letter changes at this point, but I just wanted to clarify that. The reason I sent that additional follow-up email that Mr. Ben Israel just mentioned was once I found out that they were looking at utilizing the existing sign, I wanted to let him know, maybe the appeal goes away if you understand that you can have the Parker's signage on the existing freestanding sign as long as it didn't occupy a space larger than 40 square feet, but that it would still have to have the Sea Turtle Marketplace signage up at the top and all that information. So I just wanted to let him know my confusion with the original determination request and what would be allowed per the LMO, and thinking that potentially the appeal would go away. And then so when Mr. Ben Israel let me know that no, they were looking at utilizing the entire sign, potentially making it larger, and that they wanted to get rid of the Sea Turtle Marketplace. So that's the content of that email conversation. Second thing I wanted to do was share my screen and pull up the site plan that was approved for Sea Turtle Marketplace. You can clearly see parcel E. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Any board members? Mr. Johnson, I don't know whether you're able to see this. Mr. Johnson, are you able to see this?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Great. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Ms. Dixon.
Sure. Parcel E up at the top right-hand corner is the location of the proposed Parkers. And so you can clearly see its original intent with being part of the greater Sea Turtle Marketplace Shopping Center. It shares access, it shares drainage and stormwater infrastructure, it shares tree mitigation. It was all included in part of the original DPR. Now it was labeled as a future development, future parcel, but it is all part of the greater Sea Turtle Marketplace. It is not a standalone site or development. If it was not part of the greater Sea Turtle Marketplace Shopping Center, they wouldn't even be allowed to have a gas station there. The property is zoned CC, Community Commercial, and gas stations are allowed with conditions. One of the conditions is that they do not have direct access to a major arterial road. So because this site has access through the shopping center and not direct access onto 278, which is a major arterial road, they're allowed to have a gas station there. But it's only because they share access as part of the shopping center. So it clearly functions and was intended to be part of the greater shopping center. The reason that the sign that is there now is the size that it is because it was based on the square footage of the entire shopping center. We would not approve a sign for Parkers at that size if it was a standalone development. The other thing I wanted to share was the Sea Turtle Marketplace sign that was approved that shows the 6 tenant panel spaces. So
Ms. Dixon?
Parker's could,
Ms. Dixon, your
yes.
screen is gray.
Oh, okay. Let me try to do this again. Hold on. I don't know why I'm having trouble over here. Anyway, I was going to show you the sign that was approved that's there now, the Sea Turtle Marketplace sign that was approved as a freestanding sign, part of the sign system for Sea Turtle Marketplace. Again, if Parker's was to submit a sign request just for a standalone site, they would only be allowed to have a 40 square foot sign face with a maximum height of 8 feet high and a maximum width of 15 feet wide. The applicant is requesting to redo the sign, build it higher, up to 15 feet in height, which is not even allowed per the LMO. The maximum height of a sign that's allowed per the LMO is 12 feet in height, and that would be based on the larger square footage for a shopping center, and that's why the sign that's there right now is the size that it is. So what the applicant is requesting is not even allowed per the LMO. The LMO does not allow variances for sign standards, so we wouldn't even be able to approve a sign that large. Any changes to the existing sign would have to go to the design review board as well for compliance with island character and the design guide, and they refer back to the LMO and would not be able to grant approval of the sign larger than what would be there now. And the other thing I wanted to add was just because the property owner grants permission to Parkers to occupy, grants them exclusive rights to the sign, doesn't mean that they don't have to abide by the LMO. They still do, whether they have rights to the sign or not. And so staff would not approve a sign permit to allow the applicant to redo the sign with just Parkers. It's part of the greater shopping center and has to use the existing sign that's there. We would not allow an additional freestanding or allow the applicant to redo the sign strictly for the business of Parkers. I think that's really all I have. Do you have any questions for me on how I came up with the determination? And
Yes, we'll go around again with the board in a rotation schedule, and Mr. Walczak, you get to go first this time if you have any questions.
Hey, no, not really. I just want to thank Nicole for doing a good job on this. Thank you.
Mr. White.
No, I have no further questions.
Ms. Loudermilk.
My only question, I guess, for clarification, assuming that this parcel is in fact and will remain in fact part of the development, the subdivision, so assuming this sign size is appropriate per the LMO for the development, does the LMO just talk to me so I understand what may or may not be contained on the sign? I understand the size limitation aspects, etc. But maybe where within the LMO, tell me why Sea Turtle must stay on the sign. Talk to me about that.
Okay, so the sign was approved as part of the Sea Turtle Marketplace sign system as a directory sign for the shopping center.
Right.
So it identifies the shopping center by name, and it was approved with tenant panels below. The reason it was approved at that size was because a freestanding directory sign like that, is based on the total square footage of the shopping center.
Yes, okay.
And so it was approved to be that size because it's part of the shopping center. And so the sign needs to identify the location of the shopping center. If you remove Sea Turtle Marketplace from it and allow the entire sign to be used by the Parker's business, it's no longer a sign identifying the shopping center and part of the sign system. So that totally goes away. And then it would not meet LMO compliance for a freestanding development.
I guess I understand logically what you're saying. I'm just wondering, or asking, I guess, where, specifically does the LMO state that, or it's more of an implication? And I don't know if that's an answer, but.
There's a table in the LMO, and I'm going to pull it up so I can cite the exact section for y'all to look at. In 16.5.114, the sign standards. You scroll down to it, and then I'll hopefully be able to share my screen. Can you see my screen? I've got the LMO up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is the table that talks about the size and the number of signs that's allowed based on development square footage size. So the shopping center is over 140,000 square feet. So you would go to this row of the table. So since it's over 100,000 square feet, and the development has frontage on 2 or 3 streets, it would be allowed to have 4 signs. And the LMO further goes down to say that signs have to be separated by 200 feet in between. So based on that, they were limited with the location of the signs and the amount. So based on their linear footage or frontage of development, they had to separate their signs by 200 feet. And then this gives you the maximum square footage of the sign. So their maximum sign face shall not exceed 120 square feet. The Parker's is, I believe, close to 5,000 square feet. So you would go down to this category down here, in between 2,500 and 39,000. Their maximum square footage would be 40 square feet. If you look over at the sign face maximum. So if Parker's was to come in with a sign permit just for their site alone, one, if it was a standalone development, they would not be able to be located at that site. Again, the only reason a gas sales is able to be located there is because they're part of the shopping center. But if they were, if they met those conditions and came in for a sign permit, they'd only be allowed to have a 40 square foot sign. The reason that the existing sign that's there now was approved was because it was based on the entire shopping center. I don't know if that's answering your question or not.
I understand that part, and I again, not trying to be argumentative, but what I'm trying to get to is who is the authority to determine the verbiage then that appears on the sign? Would that be the design review board?
Well, I'm gonna.
In the very beginning, and this is very hypothetical, but in the very beginning, let's argue Steinmart was the primary tenant in this shopping center. And could there have been an agreement between the developer and Steinmart that said, on this one sign, we're going to just put Steinmart. We're not going to put anybody else. But then we'll put everybody else on the other 3 signs. I mean, who determines what can be on the sign?
Okay, so I'm going to have, I've got Shay Farrar on the call. She's my sign expert. She's the town's landscape urban design associate, and she reviews sign permits and approves them. Anything larger than 40 square feet has to go to the design review board, but she can speak more to that. Shay, are you on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Shay Farrar, landscape associate. The reason that we felt that the identification of sea turtle marketplace was important for the sign face was based on the fact that it's part of that shopping center. That sign system was approved, which is approved by the Design Review Board. Also, it provides the address as well as identification of where the access to Parker's would be. If Parker's takes the sea turtle reference off, the next sign that you get to is a sea turtle marketplace sign where you have to turn in. So we don't have a provision in the LMO that regulates content directly like you're questioning, but it's just a matter of the use of the sign, the business license, identification, and reasonable accessibility and safety for people looking to access Parker's. I would also like to add that the limit for the size of changeable copy is 8 inches. So
Okay.
I believe that the Parkers could have a large portion of that sign, and the limit on the changeable copy will still allow them to have enough signage to identify the business. And it's going to be a gas station, which the canopy in itself alone is probably the primary function of signage for that business.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Loudermilk?
Of course. And I don't know
Go
if
ahead.
this is applicable or not, Nicole. And I wish I had maybe focused more specifically by recent site visit, but is this similar or different from when the signage that exists when Kroger built their gas station at Shelter Cove? Can anybody talk to me about their signage?
Shay, do you want to?
Yeah. Yeah, in the same way that this shopping center has a sign system, Shelter Cove Town Center developed a sign system for that shopping center. The Kroger is considered part of the shopping center and was allotted that space as part of the sign system.
And you're telling me that their dimensions comply within, that there were no variances or?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Loudermilk?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Johnson, any questions from you?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fingerhut, questions from you?
Thank you. I have no questions.
Dr. Ponder, questions from you?
Just one quick follow-up or expansion to Ms. Laudermilk's question. Are there any signs on the island that is there any precedent for making this change? Are there any signs on the island that are aligned with what the appellant is asking for? Are there any other signs on the island of this size for this kind of a business or any other? Has this exception ever been made?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'll defer to Shay. Are you still on the call, Shay?
Yes. I can't answer that with great confidence. There are a number of non-conforming signs that exist, but as far as the scenario where a parcel within a shopping center development has its own standalone sign is limited, and it was probably prior to our current regulation.
Can you give me an example of a non-conforming sign?
I'm sorry?
Can
Could
you
you
give me
repeat that?
can you give me a current example of a non-conforming sign?
Well, are you speaking, there are various types of nonconformities, their size, location. So it's, off the top of my head, um, I'm not able to think of one that's nonconforming, specifically for size.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ponder. Now it's to me to ask questions. Ms. Dixon, I apologize if I didn't understand this correctly, but my question is about the zoning
Okay.
and whether or not a gas station is allowed. I thought I understood you to say that as part of a shopping center, based on the zoning, a gas station / convenience store would be allowed. But if it were a standalone parcel, it would not be allowed in that zoning district. And did I hear that correctly? And forgive me if
No,
I did
it's
not.
sure, I'll clarify that. It's allowed in the zoning district with conditions. And one of the conditions is that gas sales shall not have direct access onto a major arterial road. 278 is a major arterial road. So the site itself cannot have direct access onto 278. The access to the site of the gas station is through Sea Turtle Marketplace, so it does not have direct access onto 278. And so that I was using that to demonstrate that how it functions together with the shopping center and is part of the shopping center. If it was not part of the shopping center and the site had direct access onto 278, we would not permit a gas station to be located there.
Okay. So if it were a separate parcel, not a part of the shopping center, and the shopping center gave it some sort of easement or right of way for access, so that it's not coming through 278, the major arterial, would it then be permitted?
If they did not have the direct access onto 278, as long
Okay.
as long as there's a way to get there from 278 directly, then they would not be able to be located there.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Those are my questions. Any other follow-up from board members with questions to staff before we move to rebuttal? Hearing none, we'll move now to Mr. Ben Yisrael. You have 5 minutes if you want to rebut any of the presentation by staff.
Sure,
And
Madam Chair. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the line of questioning, to which I'd like to follow up. The last question that was asked established a great point, and that is that the staff's reasoning or that this is to be considered a part of the shopping center because it's accessed through the shopping center isn't in line with the fact that access through the shopping center, as you were just asking, by virtue of an easement or something right granted to the convenience store, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a part of the shopping center. It's just access to meet the zoning ordinance. So the store would be allowed there. The access is granted through the shopping center, but that alone doesn't make it a part of the shopping center. It's just how it's accessed. The second thing I like to point out is that from what I understood from staff's testimony and the questioning by the board, the LMO does not prohibit us from removing Sea Turtle Marketplace from that sign. This is purely a staff preference based on their feeling that Sea Turtle Marketplace needs to be on the sign to maybe help identify the greater area. That sign is not a directional sign. It doesn't say Sea Turtle Marketplace, turn, next right or 500 feet. It just says Sea Turtle Marketplace. So I would disagree with the argument that it's a directional sign and that it needs to be there. It sounds like it was purely up to the discretion of the developer to put Sea Turtle Marketplace there, The Kroger example was stated, was shared, and if it sounds like if the developer of the Kroger or of Sea Turtle Marketplace decided that the name of the greater shopping center didn't need to be on that sign, that it would be at their discretion whether or not it was placed there. So conceivably, when this development was established, the developer could have said, we're not going to have Sea Turtle Marketplace on the sign, and that would have been approved. There's nothing in the LMO, to my understanding, that would require them to put Sea Turtle Marketplace and the address on the sign. I don't think we object to having our address or on the sign, but the greater, I guess, the bigger issue is the Sea Turtle Marketplace identification, which, based on the testimony by staff, isn't mandated by the LMO, and that's a big part of this appeal. Is that in exercising our exclusive right to utilize the sign, we don't feel as though we're obligated to have the Sea Turtle Marketplace identification remain on the sign.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any rebuttal by the staff? Ms. Dixon?
The only two things I will mention is when he mentioned that just because they share access doesn't mean that they're part of the shopping center. When the shopping center development plan review was under review, it took into account all of the parcels, including the proposed Parker site, for access, for drainage and stormwater infrastructure, for tree removal and tree mitigation. All of the parcels, including the Parker site, was part of that DPR that was approved. So that parcel was looked at as part of the greater Sea Turtle Marketplace, and all of the infrastructure that was done was part of that DPR. So it is part of the shopping center. And the other thing I would like to mention is the sign system, the sign that's there now is part of a sign system that was approved by the DRB. The DRB approved a sign system that has Sea Turtle Marketplace up at the top of it. So to change that sign now would have to require review of the DRB. But again, it does not meet the standards of the LMO for a standalone business.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. The next part of the process is our board discussion. We have discussion before we try to come up with a motion based on this appeal. In order to try to frame that discussion, I would refer board members to our template. Mr. Fingerhut, we've used these, I think, since you were on the board, and we were furnished with the template for an appeal motion. Just reminding the board of the options as set forth in our appeal motion. One option is to affirm the decision or interpretation made by staff. Another option is to modify or reverse the action of the staff because of an error in determining whether a requirement of the LMO was met. And the record must indicate that an error in judgment occurred or facts, plans, or regulations were misread in determining whether the particular requirement was or was not met. Third option is to modify or reverse the decision interpretation made by staff because the decision was based on a requirement not contained in the LMO or other appropriate town ordinances, regulations, or state law. And the record must indicate the error or errors in regulations that were misapplied in determining whether the particular requirement was or was not met. And the last option is modify or reverse the decision interpretation because staff made an error in applying a requirement of the LMO, and the record must indicate that an error in applying the ordinance occurred. So in having our discussion, those are our options. And again, we'll go in a rotation order. And this time, Mr. White, you get to go first for discussion.
I think Nicole has presented this very well. And I have really no questions. I think it's pretty clear cut.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Ms. Loudermilk, discussion by you.
Yeah, discussion. I'm talking out loud.
That's
I
okay.
think, I think Ms. Dixon and staff made it clear that were this a standalone parcel, the sign limitations, frankly, would be much more restrictive. So to me, there is no benefit to the appellant to kind of pursue the logic of the standalone parcel. So talking through that, assuming the signage remains as part of the development, my question still in my mind relates to the verbiage on the sign, not the size. I feel the size is dictated by the overall sign design and standards for the development. So I'm not seeing an ability to increase the size. I am still questioning the verbiage, though. Could the verbiage on the sign be changed? So that's still the potential modification that I'm thinking about.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Johnson, discussion from you.
Yes, I was doing quite well understanding what Miss Dixon was saying up until she said, I'm confused on whether it can't be both a standalone and part of the shopping center, the parcel. And is there any minimum, no, I'm just thinking out loud, is there any minimum to what the sea turtle signage would have to be on this sign? So could it be 3 inches by a quarter of an inch?
Okay.
I don't have any more discussion points.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Fingerhut, discussion from you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It appears, based upon the presentation made by the appellant and by the town, that there's no dispute that the parcel E is part of the Sea Turtle Marketplace, and that certainly the conveyor of, because it hasn't been conveyed yet apparently, but the conveyor of parcel E can certainly transfer whatever rights it has to Parker's. The issue, as I see it, though, is that no property owner in the Sea Turtle Marketplace can unilaterally change the signage that's been approved by the Design Review Board, or in the process that the entire site went through when they applied to be a development. So if what the applicant really wants is to somehow change the signage for itself, sort of have a carve out of other Sea Turtle Marketplace signs, then it would seem to me that what the applicant would have to do would be go to the Design Review Board and make that kind of a request. I think the request would fail, though, because it would be confusing. I mean, this is part of the Sea Turtle Marketplace. It would be like, like the Hilton Head Town Center, Park Plaza, any places where you had multiple property owners functioning as a single development. A person driving by, if they want to know, how to get to the gas station at Kroger, well, it's because it's in the town center, so I can get there from several different access points within the town center. Same is true for Sea Turtle Marketplace. To grant a carve out, I think for one parcel in the Sea Turtle Marketplace would be a mistake, but certainly staff's determination, I think, is correct. I mean, at best, this is a Design Review Board application. I think they would say no, but at best, that's where this would belong. I think staff made the right determination here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
Dr. Ponder, to you.
I tend to agree. I think that any changes here would be for precedent, and I'd be concerned about what that kind of decision would portend for the future. And I just don't see this as being standalone or carve-out worthy. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Walczak, to you.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm ready to move the question if that be okay with you.
Yes, we're the only one left to discuss would be me, and I'm fine with you doing that.
Okay, I move that based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, that the Board of Zoning Appeals affirm the decision or interpretation made by staff.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fingerhut. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Haley, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Walczak,
For the motion.
Mr. White,
For the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk,
For the motion.
Mr. Johnson,
For the motion.
Mr. Ponder,
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut,
For the motion.
Ms. Bryson.
For the motion.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all. Mr. Ben Israel, the staff will be in touch with you with regard to our notice of action, and that will have information on what your rights are after that. So thank you very much for your presentation and patience during this matter. And Mr. Ben Israel, you're welcome to stay with us for the rest of our meeting, or you can depart the meeting anytime that you choose.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I really appreciate your time and consideration of our appeal.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda. We'll pick back up with staff reports, and we were down to 12B, the update on board training from Missy Lewick. Ms. Lewick, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, thank you. As you're aware, the board needs to complete their required state training every year. We are looking into and working with our staff attorney on a more legal training that we're going to try to bring to you, and Diane is working on that presentation now. We have done in the past a how to conduct meetings session that was tailored for the BZA. We could do that again. And then the Municipal Association of South Carolina also has online classes that board members could do on their own time, and they can be done at any time. So there are those opportunities are kind of what we have on the slate right now. And I guess if there are any other requests for training from board members that they would like for us to look into, it is difficult to, of course, meet and prepare these, but and we used to have additional trainings that were done in-house by various board members as well. So I'm not sure what else the board was interested in for their training opportunities, but those are kind of the thoughts we had so far.
Ms. Lewick, can you remind the board of how many hours we're required to have, and by what date must we complete those hours?
It's 3 hours of board training, and that is due by June 30th.
I think it might be helpful because we're already close to the end of January, to send out the link to the Municipal Association of South Carolina, to their training link, which one can do online. I know I took a couple courses last year to complete my hours, and so if board members want to get ahead on their 3 hours, and it might be helpful for you or Ms. Haley to send us a tally of how many hours we each have, if any of us has any during this year, so that we know how many hours we need. I don't think you need to send that to all the board, but perhaps to individual board members about you have 1 hour and you need 3 hours or whatever that is. I think that might be helpful for us to know. And then I think we're mindful that y'all are working hard to come up with some training for us so that we can meet the June 30 deadline. So any other questions or comments or suggestions from board members? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is a waiver report by Ms. Lewick.
So in your packet, the waiver report was included. There was one waiver that had been approved since the last time the board had met. It was in relation to a street project in Sea Pines, and the waiver was for removal of significant trees, which through the waiver request were mitigated for.
Okay. Any questions about that waiver report from board members? Hearing none, we'll move on to update on pending appeals to Circuit Court. The board members were notified that there have been appeals filed from property owners within the Sandcastle subdivision based on those requests that we heard over the last few months. And we do have some pending appeals coming up that will be heard probably in February in that same subdivision. Diane Bush, our new staff attorney, is prepared to address questions. And due to the nature of it being perhaps legal advice, it might be appropriate to go into executive session. And I would ask Ms. Bush if there's anything that could be updated during the public discussion before we would go into executive session.
No, ma'am. It's what I was prepared to discuss with the board is all falls underneath the category of legal advice, and so pursuant to Code Section 30-4-70. I would say it is appropriate for the board to go into executive session at this time.
Okay. Prior to having a motion, we will need to pause after we go into executive session to allow the staff to disconnect from public and reconnect us. That may not be the technical description, but that's in essence what would happen. Then when we return from executive session, I will need to call Ms. Haley to reconnect us in the public session. So just to let you know, that's how this process will work. And so at this time, I would ask for a motion pursuant to South Carolina Code Section 30-4-70A2 for receipt of legal advice related to pending appeals filed with Circuit Court concerning the variance applications of certain property owners of Sandcastles by the Sea subdivision. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mr. Fingerhut, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Walzak. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Haley, will you call the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Walzak?
For the motion.
Mr. White?
For the motion.
Ms. Balderville?
For the motion.
Mr. Johnson?
For the motion.
Dr. Ponder?
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut?
For the motion.
Ms. Friesen?
For the motion. So we'll now go into executive session. And if you'll bear with us, board members, the staff will alert us when it's time for us to begin speaking in executive session. Thank you.
The broadcast of Facebook Live has stopped.
Ms. Haley, have we returned to public session?
Madam Chair, not yet. If you'll just give us another moment, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay. I'll call the meeting back to order upon return from executive session of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the town of Hilton Head Island. There was no action to be taken, pardon me, there's no action to be taken as a result of the executive session. So now it is time for adjournment, unless there is any other business before the board. Hearing none, with thanks to our board members and staff, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.